All right, we begin with the very latest on Operation Epic Fury. Over the course of the last week since the mission began, U.S. forces striking over 3,000 targets, destroying 43 Iranian warships, all in just a matter of days. The strikes diminishing Iran's missile and drone capabilities. Since the start of the war, there's been a 90% drop in Iran missile attacks and an 82% drop in drone attacks.
And new satellite images are showing the destructive aftermath of facilities in Iran. This image shows what a missile base looks like before and after the strikes. And this is the damage at a coastal military facility inside of the country.
Meanwhile, President Trump is demanding total submission from the Iranian regime. Writing on Truth Social, there will be no deal with Iran except unconditional surrender. After that, the selection of a great and acceptable leader, we and many of our wonderful and very brave allies and partners will work tirelessly to bring Iran back from the brink of destruction, making it economically bigger, better, and stronger than ever before.
Today, President Trump, First Lady Melania Trump, and members of the cabinet will attend a dignified transfer for the service members who were killed in Kuwait. It will be held at Dover Air Force Base.
And as a grateful nation honors these 6 soldiers, we're learning more about who they were. Army Reserve Captain Cody Cork's calling in life was to serve his country. His longtime friend telling reporters he has always been dedicated to this country and all of what it stands for. Fellow soldier who served under Cork for a year called him a solid leader who would never put a soldier in harm's way. And then Sergeant First Class Nicole Amor, who's just days away from returning home to her husband and 2 children when the deadly drone strike happened. Her husband says she loved gardening and making salsa from peppers and tomatoes she grew with her kids.
Sergeant First Class Noah Teichens, he was a Nebraska native who taught martial arts, and he is described by friends as a dedicated family man and a soldier. His family friends say that the news of his death put his loved ones in denial, especially as they planned on celebrating his 43rd birthday this past Thursday. He leaves behind his wife and a 12-year-old son. Sergeant Declan Cody was also killed, and he is only 20 years old. He had been checking in with his family from Kuwait every hour or two after Operation Epic Fury kicked off last weekend. His father telling the Associated Press that he stopped responding to messages on Sunday, which prompted concerns from the family.
Jeffrey R. O'Brien was a dedicated major who received a number of medals, including the Meritorious Unit Commendation. The family released a statement saying they are in shock, grieving and grappling with the reality of losing the most important man in their lives. He leaves behind his wife and at least 3 young children. Chief Warrant Officer 3 Robert M. Marzon was just 2 months away from returning home to Sacramento on his last deployment after serving in the Army for more than 30 years, according to his niece, who honored her uncle in a Facebook post. The Pentagon is waiting for medical examiners to positively identify the soldier and confirm his death. Marzon has a wife and 2 children waiting for him at home. Let's go straight to Nate Foy live in Tel Aviv with the very latest on the war front. Good morning, Nate.
Hey guys, good morning. And President Trump sort of warned the American public that more casualties are likely, as that is just a reality of war. But overall, he says that this operation is going incredible. He rated Operation Epic Fury as a 15 on a scale of 1 to 10. He says it's going incredibly well, inflicting a lot of damage on the Iranian regime. And both American and Israeli forces are doing that, with Israel overnight leading the charge with new strikes, both in Tehran, but also on Hezbollah positions in Lebanon. So take a look at this new video as they took out an IRGC military university, as well as Iranian missile storage sites, both above and below ground. In Lebanon, Israel hit Hezbollah rocket launchers and weapons depots. The IDF said that it launched that new wave of broad-scale strikes in Tehran this morning, with 80 Israeli fighter jets coordinating in the attack, as the U.S. and Israel continue degrading Iran's offensive and defensive capabilities. However, that capability still exists, and the regime can still attack. Overnight, Iranian drones struck near the Dubai airport. Earlier in the night, an Iranian drone struck an oil facility in southern Iraq. Despite that, Iran's president, Masoud Pezeshkian, said this morning, quote, "I should apologize to the neighboring countries that were attacked by Iran on my own behalf. From now on, they should not attack neighboring countries or fire missiles at them unless we are attacked from those countries. I think we should solve this through diplomacy." He blames some of these incidents, as he called it, on miscommunication because so many of the Iranian leadership has been killed at this point. Iran has fired on 12 countries across the region. They've hit military and civilian targets. Many of those countries are, of course, furious. President Pezeshkian said yesterday that mediation talks are now underway with several Gulf states. Now, the IRGC is claiming to have attacked an oil tanker in the Strait of Hormuz. Also, overnight, we know that their Navy is decimated with, as you mentioned, the U.S. having sunk 43 ships on top of those 3,000 targets on the ground. But as I mentioned, Iran still does possess capabilities. We saw that here in Tel Aviv. The sirens went off 6 times yesterday, several times this morning as well. And we saw dozens of interceptor missiles go off over my shoulder. One missile was intercepted over Tel Aviv. Another one landed in an open area. So despite the fact that Iran is less capable, they still do have the ability to hit Israel and other countries in the region.
So, Nate, you're there in Tel Aviv. Can you give us a sense of what civilian life feels like right there during daylight hours? It looks like traffic behind you is traveling. Is that lighter than it normally is? Are people out and about?
Yeah, it's definitely lighter than it normally is. Now, you know, in Israel, they're used to being attacked, so it's not like life grinds to a total halt. But compared to my previous trips here, this is now my 3rd time in Tel Aviv. Businesses are closed much more than they normally are. There are fewer people out on the streets. But that being said, people do still move on with their lives. War is a reality here. So you do still see people out on the streets, but not quite as much as normal.
Right.
Nate, what is the death toll in Israel? Do we know that number?
Well, so there have been 2 deadly strikes in Tel Aviv or near Tel Aviv and near Jerusalem. I believe the number is 7. I'll have to double check on that exact number, but relative to the punishment that has been inflicted on Iran, it's not close. This operation has been just a massive success from a military perspective.
Right.
But as we saw last night here in Tel Aviv, the people of Israel and also, you know, the other countries in the region, despite the fact that, you know, Pezeshkian of Iran is saying that these attacks are going to stop, we'll actually see if that actually happens.
All right.
Thank you, Nate.
Thanks, Nate. We're going to move over to Griff, who's going to give us a wall walk.
Yeah, and Rachel, you know, when Nate Foy says that this has been a clear military success, Operation Epic Fury, just 1 week in, under the leadership of Secretary Hegseth, General Kane, and Admiral Cooper, has really broken records for its successes. Let's look at exactly what the American forces have used. 2,000 munitions, everything from drones all the way up to massive ordnance penetrators taking out bunkers. 200 different fighters, from missile launchers to fighter jets to attack jets to things that even the administration says they can't tell us. And of course, the 2 aircraft carriers, the Lincoln and the Ford. A third one we're told may be on the way in the B-1 and B-2 bombers. What have they hit? The Iranian asset loss count, 3,000 targets struck. To include the missile launching capabilities, we have seen the decrease of the number of missiles that Iran has been able to launch down 90%, drones down 83%, 43 Iranian ships destroyed. It is, in 1 week, Operation Epic Fury has essentially wiped out the Iranian Navy. And of course, one submarine destroyed as well. Now, let's look at, you saw in Nate's report that Iran's president saying they were apologizing to countries they hit. Well, they hit a lot of countries. They hit a dozen countries in the region, essentially everybody, from, of course, Israel. And we saw the U.S. bases in Kuwait, in Bahrain, in Qatar, in the UAE. They hit Oman as well. The Strait of Hormuz is right here. That's why there's so much. Saudi Arabia hit. And then even all the way up to Azerbaijan, they hit. That is why so many of the Gulf states are getting in this fight. We didn't necessarily have this on our bingo card, but you can bet they're not happy. They're responding. We'll see where that goes. And that's been a little bit, guys, of the game changer in all of this, is that when the U.S. and Israel launched this attack, the reaction to the Gulf states being attacked by Iran is something that is changing the trajectory, because those countries in places like Bahrain, in the UAE, in Qatar, in Saudi Arabia, these are now today tourist destinations. They have a lot at stake. And when bombs are raining down on them, they're not going to sit by and take it.
They're clearly upset at Iran. My question is, can it cut both ways? Could any of these countries also be upset that maybe they want us to do a better job of protecting them, or are they satisfied with the level of protection they're having?
Yeah, it certainly complicates things, but it also, I would imagine, when we look back at this, this will be this dynamic will be probably one of the most important dynamics. And, you know, the Iranian president makes a very good point. You know, the Iranian regime has in place all these mechanisms that if somebody gets knocked off, strikes still occur. And so maybe a lot of these strikes did occur in a vacuum of leadership. But then that raises the second question, which is, OK, well, then if we're going to demand absolute surrender, total surrender, then who surrenders in that leadership vacuum?
Yeah, and, you know, what's really sort of an interesting moment this week, I'm not sure what the latest count is, but at one point, Iran fired more missiles on the UAE than they had even Israel. And that's why they're getting into this fight. That's why they're drawing a line, their own red line in the sand.
Is that because it's easier for them to get, you know, obviously to attack UAE just in terms of distance, or what is the political reason for doing that?
Well, one would think that Iran's basic goal is to strike where we have U.S. military installations, including the UAE, Qatar, Bahrain. But yet, at the same time, you're seeing that these Gulf state countries that have been hit, they're hitting in tourist areas, a hotel catching on fire. And that's where they've said no. And Iran's ultimate goal was, they thought perhaps that by attacking the Gulf states, they would then put pressure on the Trump administration to stop the war. But it's done just the opposite.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.